The kitchen was dead quiet, except for the hum of their refrigerator when Barbara looked me straight in the eye and said, "Gerald, you live here free. It's time you handed over your savings or found somewhere else to live." Just like that. No build-up, no apology. She had this spreadsheet printed out in front of her, all neat columns and numbers, like she was presenting a business proposal to a client instead of talking to her father-in-law. My name is Gerald Mitchell. I'm 57 years old, and I never thought I'd be sitting at my daughter-in-law's kitchen table being told to fork over my life savings or hit the road. Let me back up and tell you how I got there, because this story starts 3 years earlier in a very different kitchen. Carol died in April 2019, pancreatic cancer. 7 weeks from diagnosis to gone. We'd been married 38 years, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't handle it well at first. I sat in our kitchen in Dayton for days, just staring at the walls, eating crackers straight from the sleeve. The house felt like a museum after she was gone. Too quiet, too empty, too full of memories that seemed to echo off every surface. I worked 31 years as an operations manager for a mid-sized logistics company called Great Lakes Distribution. Started there right after Howard was born, worked my way up from the warehouse floor to managing a team of 40 people. Good job, steady pay, decent pension that kicked in when I turned 55. Carol and I had bought our 3-bedroom house on Maple Street back in 1996 when Howard was in 7th grade. Nothing fancy, vinyl siding, small front porch, detached garage, but it was ours. We paid $100 for it, which felt like a fortune at the time. Howard lives about 90 minutes away in Columbus with his wife, Barbara, and their 2 kids. He's 35 now, works in IT for a healthcare company, makes decent money. Barbara's 32, works in marketing for an insurance company. Smart woman, always dressed sharp, knows how to present herself. They got married 5 years ago, and I liked her fine at the wedding. She was polite, asked good questions, seemed genuinely interested in Carol's stories about Howard growing up. Carol had some reservations she kept mostly to herself, but I told her every family finds their rhythm eventually. Those first months after Carol passed, Howard called every few days. We'd talk about work, weather, the kids, normal stuff. He'd ask how I was sleeping, and I'd say fine, even when I was up until 3 a.m. watching old movies. Around October, he started mentioning the house, not direct, mind you. He'd say things like, "That's a big place for one person, Dad," or "Have you seen what houses are selling for on Maple Street these days?" I'd tell him I was managing fine, which was mostly true. By March 2020, when everything shut down with COVID, I was going stir-crazy in that house. Weeks would go by where I barely talked to another soul except Mary at the grocery store checkout. My sister Patricia lives in Phoenix, and phone calls only do so much when you're rattling around in a house that feels 10 times bigger than it used to. That's when Howard called and said, "Dad, why don't you come stay with us for a while? We've got that basement apartment, and the kids would love having Grandpa around during all this craziness." Barbara got on the phone too, saying they'd been worried about me being alone and that they had plenty of room. I thought about it for 3 weeks. Made a list of pros and cons, which is how I've always made big decisions. 31 years in logistics teaches you to analyze every angle before committing. Finally, I packed 2 suitcases and drove to Columbus on a Thursday afternoon in late March. That first summer was actually great. I won't lie about that part. Howard would fire up the grill on Saturday afternoons and we'd drink beer and watch the kids play in the backyard while burgers sizzled. Barbara made this incredible pot roast on Sundays that reminded me of Carol's cooking, complete with carrots and potatoes that fell apart when you touched them with a fork. The kids, Leonard's 10 and Dorothy's 7, minus were the highlight of my days. Leonard loves baseball statistics with an intensity that impressed me, and Dorothy's obsessed with ocean animals. We'd spend hours talking about batting averages or whale migration patterns. The basement apartment was exactly what they'd described. Private entrance through the back patio, full bathroom with a decent shower, little kitchenette with a 2-burner stove and mini fridge. I kept my own schedule, watched my shows on the small TV I'd brought from Dayton, read my books without anyone bothering me. Felt like I was contributing to the household instead of just taking up space. Around August, Howard mentioned that I should think about selling the Dayton house. He wasn't wrong about the logic. The market was hot. Property values were climbing, and maintaining an empty house was expensive between property taxes, insurance, and basic upkeep. I was driving back there every few weeks to check on things, which was getting old fast. In October, I listed the house with a realtor Howard recommended. The market was absolutely crazy. 3 families looked at it the first weekend, and I had 2 offers by Monday morning. Sold in 9 days for $185,000, which was $40,000 more than We'd paid for it 24 years earlier. After paying off what was left on the mortgage and covering realtor fees and some minor repairs it made before listing, I cleared about $160,000. Combined with my existing savings and Carol's life insurance, I had a decent nest egg sitting in my checking account. That's when things started to shift, and I want to be precise about the timeline here because it becomes important later. Around February the next year, Howard and Barbara sat me down one evening after the kids were in bed. They had that energy couples get when they've rehearsed something in private. Barbara did most of the talking, which should have been my first warning sign, but I was still operating under the assumption that we were all family here. She said they were looking at bigger houses and better school districts, and they were about $12,000 short on the down payment they wanted to feel comfortable with. Howard was quick to jump in and say they weren't asking for anything, just being transparent because we were family and they didn't keep secrets from each other. But the way Barbara looked at me after she laid out those numbers, I knew what they were hoping for. The look wasn't demanding, exactly, but it was expectant. Like when a salesperson quotes you a price and then waits to see how you'll react. I thought about it for a week. Thought about Carol, about the kids having a better backyard and good schools, about family helping family when they could. Thought about $160,000 sitting in my checking account, earning practically nothing. A week later, I told them I'd gift them $15,000 for their down payment. Not a loan, I made that clear. A gift. Barbara hugged me and called me the most generous man she'd ever known. Howard shook my hand and said he'd pay me back someday, even though I'd told them it was a gift. I should have paid more attention to that comment, but I was feeling good about helping my son get ahead. They found a beautiful 4-bedroom house in Westerville by April. Great neighborhood, big backyard with mature trees, finished basement, good schools. The kind of place Carol and I had dreamed about when we were young and scraping together every dollar. They moved in May, and the basement set up in the new place was even nicer than what I'd had before. Walkout basement with sliding glass doors to a little patio where I could sit in the mornings with my coffee and watch rabbits hop across the back lawn. Here's where I need to be clear about something, because this becomes crucial to everything that happened later. I wasn't freeloading, not by a long shot. I was picking up Leonard and Dorothy from school 3 days a week because Barbara's hours had gotten longer and Howard's commute was unpredictable. I bought groceries twice a week from the goods store, the kind of shopping that stocked a full kitchen for a family of 5. When their dishwasher died in September, I didn't say a word to anyone. I just called the repair guy myself and paid the $380 bill when he finished. I was contributing to that household in ways that went far beyond just occupying space. My retirement income from Great Lakes is $2,900 a month between my pension and Social Security. That money was mine to spend on gas, clothes when I needed them, the occasional dinner out, doctor visits. I wasn't asking them to support me. But around November, Howard casually mentioned that the mortgage on the new house was tighter than they'd expected. Interest rates had ticked up between the time they'd gotten pre-approved and the time they actually closed. He said, didn't ask for anything, just mentioned it during a commercial break while we were watching Monday Night Football. Then Barbara brought it up at dinner the following week, talking about how utility bills were higher with the extra square footage. Gas bills going to be brutal this winter, she said, looking at her plate while she cut her chicken. Square footage really makes a difference. She wasn't asking directly, but the message was clear enough. I started contributing $200 a month toward utilities in December. Brought it up myself, told them I wanted to help since I was using electricity and heat too. Howard said it wasn't necessary, and I said I insisted. Barbara smiled and said thank you, but it was her marketing smile, professional, pleasant. Not quite reaching her eyes. By February, that $200 became $400 when I offered to cover the cable and internet bill too, since I was streaming shows and using their Wi-Fi as much as anyone. Made sense to me at the time in March. Barbara suggested we set up a shared grocery account for efficiency. She could order everything online in one big order, she said, and it would save trips to the store. Sounded reasonable on paper. I transferred $300 a month into that shared account at first, but grocery bills seemed to creep up month after month. By April, I was putting $400 into the shared account. Prices are crazy everywhere, Barbara would say, showing me receipts that included expensive cuts of meat and organic everything. Inflation's killing everyone. By April, I was contributing about $800 a month to the household between utilities, internet, and groceries. Add in the free childcare 3 days a week, the yard work I did because I enjoyed being outside, and the random repairs and kid expenses I covered without being asked, and I was providing serious value to their household. I thought we had an understanding. I thought I was earning my place in their family. I thought wrong. Looking back now, I can see how methodically it happened. Each request was reasonable by itself. Each increase was small enough that arguing about it would have made me look petty. Barbara was good at this. She understood how to apply pressure gradually, how to make each step seem logical and fair, but I was starting to keep track of things more carefully, partly out of habit from my work in logistics, partly because something was nagging at me that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I started writing down what I contributed each month, not because I was planning anything, just because I like to know where my money goes. That's when the numbers started to tell a story I didn't like. By May, I had the numbers memorized. In the 14 months since they'd moved to the Westerville house, Eid contributed over $18,000 in direct payments to their household. That didn't count the $15,000 gift for the down payment. Didn't count the childcare I provided 3 days a week, which any daycare would have charged them at least $200 a week for. Didn't count the repairs, the kids' sports equipment, birthday presents, the swing set I'd bought in August because Dorothy wanted one like her friend had. When you add it all up, I was providing close to $30,000 worth of value to their household every year. For a family with 2 working parents and a household income probably around $85,000, that was significant money. Then came that conversation in May that I started this story with. Howard called me one afternoon while I was reading on my patio. He was at work, calling me on his cell phone even though I was 40 feet away in the basement. Asked if I had time to talk that evening after dinner. Something about the way he phrased it stuck with me all day. We sat at their kitchen table after the kids were upstairs brushing their teeth. Howard sat at the end between Barbara and me, like he was refereeing a meeting. Barbara had printed out this spreadsheet showing local rental prices for basement apartments and 1-bedroom units in the area. She slid the papers across to me and said, "I've been doing some research on the rental market." Professional tone, like she was presenting quarterly numbers to her boss. 1-bedroom apartments in decent neighborhoods are going for $1,200 to $1,500 a month. Basement units with separate entrances are getting $1,000 to $1,300. I looked at the numbers. Shed done her homework, I'll give her that. The comparable properties were all legitimate listings from real apartment complexes and rental houses in the area. I'm not saying that's what we want to do, she continued, but we need to be realistic about our situation. The mortgage is higher than we anticipated, and with both cars needing work this year and Leonard starting travel baseball, we're feeling stretched. She paused, letting that sink in. Then she said, "I think $1,000 a month would be fair, given the market rates and what you're getting here." I asked what Howard thought. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth, but he said Barbara made some valid points. That's when something clicked in my brain. This wasn't a family discussion. This was a presentation, and the decision had already been made without me. I said, "I'd think about it," and went downstairs to my little patio, sat there in the dark doing math. Even with the $1,000 they wanted, it'd still be contributing nearly $2,000 a month to their household when you counted groceries and utilities. That's $24,000 a year, on top of free childcare and everything else. I called my sister Patricia in Phoenix that night, told her the whole story from the beginning. She listened without interrupting, which is unusual for Patricia. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Gerald," she said finally, "you know what they're doing, right?" I said I thought I did, but I wanted to hear her say it. "They're bleeding you dry, 1 monthly payment at a time, and they'll keep going until you have nothing left to give them." That hit me like a punch to the gut because I knew she was right. But here is what I did differently than a lot of people might have. I didn't get emotional. I didn't storm upstairs and have a confrontation. 31 years in logistics teaches you that when you have a problem, you gather information first. You document everything. You build a case. I went to the Verizon store the next day and bought a newer phone with better recording capability. Not for anything illegal or sneaky, just to have accurate records of what was being said to me. In Ohio, you can record conversations as long as one party knows about it, and I was that party. I started keeping detailed written records of every contribution I made, every grocery bill, every utility payment, every hour of childcare. I took photos of receipts. I wrote down dates and times of conversations. I treated it like a work project, because that's how my brain works best. A week later, Barbara brought up the rent situation again. This time, it was just the two of us at breakfast, Howard already gone to work. Same pleasant tone, same marketing smile. "I hope our conversation didn't land wrong," she said, pouring herself coffee. "We really appreciate everything you do, but we need to move forward with some kind of financial arrangement." I had my phone in my shirt pocket, recording. "Barbara," I said, "let me make sure I understand what you're asking. You want me to pay $1,000 a month in rent, on top of the $800 I'm already contributing for utilities and groceries, on top of picking up your kids from school 3 days a week. It's not about what we want," she said. "It's about what's fair. If we rented this space to anyone else, we'd get market rates. but you're not renting to anyone else. You're talking to your father-in-law who gave you $15,000 for your down payment and has contributed over $18,000 to your household in the past 14 months. She was quiet for a moment, and I could see her calculating. Those were gifts, she said finally. This is about current arrangements going forward. That's when I knew for certain what I was dealing with. Barbara had reframed every contribution I'd made as something I'd done for my own benefit, not theirs. The down payment wasn't help for their family, it was a gift I'd wanted to give. The monthly contributions weren't assistance with household expenses. They were just me paying my fair share. The childcare wasn't helping them manage their work schedules, it was just Grandpa spending time with grandkids. Shed systematically redefined our relationship so that everything I'd given was baseline expectation, and anything less than market rate rent was me taking advantage of their generosity. It was expertly done. I had to admire the skill, even as it made me furious. I need some time to think about this, I said. Of course, she replied. Take all the time you need, but we should probably have a decision soon. The threat was polite but clear. Pay up or get out. I spent the next 3 days doing what I do best, planning. I called a lawyer I found through the Ohio State Bar Association who specialized in elder law. Cost me $200 for a consultation, but it was the best money I spent during this whole mess. The lawyer, a woman named Susan Chen, listened to my situation and looked at the documentation I'd brought. What you're describing could constitute financial elder abuse, she said. The gradual escalation, the threats regarding housing, the manipulation around family access. These are textbook patterns. She explained that Ohio has strong laws protecting elderly people from financial exploitation, even when it's done by family members. She also mentioned something that made my blood run cold. If Barbara had been claiming my monthly contributions as rental income on her taxes without reporting it properly, that could be tax fraud. That night, I did some research online. Took me a while to figure out the IRS website, but I found the forms for reporting suspected tax fraud. I also found information about adult protective services and how to report financial abuse of elderly people, but I didn't do anything yet. I wanted to see how far Barbara would push this. I didn't have to wait long. 4 days after our breakfast conversation, she cornered me again. This time she had a lease agreement printed out, an actual lease with monthly rent of $1,000, a security deposit, and terms about additional household contributions to be negotiated separately. I thought this would make everything clearer for everyone, she said, sliding the papers across the same kitchen table where Shed presented the rental market research. I looked at the lease. It was legitimate, professionally done. Shed even included a clause about tenants' responsibility for proportional utilities, groceries, and household maintenance. What happens if I don't sign this, I asked. Then we'll need to explore other arrangements, she said. There are some nice senior communities in the area. There it was. Sign over $1,000 a month plus everything else I was already paying or get out. And she said it with that same pleasant professional tone she probably used to deny insurance claims at her day job. I signed the lease. But I added something she didn't expect, a handwritten note at the bottom stating signed under duress and the date and time. She tried to object, but I told her it was my signature or no signature. That evening, I had a conversation with Howard, just the two of us driving to get ice cream with the kids. I brought my phone along. Son, I said, do you know your wife threatened to kick me out if I don't pay $1,000 a month rent? Howard was quiet for a long moment. Things are tight financially, Dad. The house costs more than we expected. Howard, I've given your family over $30,000 in the past $18. I pay $800 a month toward your household expenses. I watch your kids 3 days a week, and now your wife wants another $1,000 a month or shall put me out on the street. It's not like that, he said, but his voice didn't have much conviction. What's it like then? He couldn't answer that question. 2 weeks later, I found something that changed everything. I was helping Barbara organize some tax documents. Shed asked me to sort through papers in their home office when I saw last year's tax return. There it was, clear as day, $9,600 in rental income from basement apartment claimed as taxable income. Sh'd been reporting my contributions as rental income, while simultaneously telling me I was living there for free. I took a photo of that tax form with my phone. Then I went online and ordered copies of my own bank statements showing every payment I'd made to them. I filled out the IRS fraud reporting forms that night. I also called Adult Protective Services and filed a report about financial elder abuse. I had recordings, documentation, and now proof of tax fraud. But I didn't tell Barbara about any of this. I just signed a lease for a 2-bedroom condo in Dublin, about 15 minutes from their house. Paid for it outright with a $140,000 from my savings account. The day I moved out, I left a folder on their kitchen table with copies of everything. The bank statements showing my contributions, photos of the tax returns, copies of the forms ID filed with the IRS and Adult Protective Services, and a note that said, "Thank you for the life lesson about family." Barbara called me 3 times that first day. I didn't answer. Howard came to see me a week later at my new place. He looked like head aged 5 years. "Dad, Barbarez getting audited by the IRS," he said. "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied. "They're also investigating us for elder abuse. That must be stressful." He sat there for a long moment looking around my new living room. "You could have just talked to us." I tried talking. "Son, your wife preferred making demands." The IRS audit found that Barbara owed $2,400 in back taxes, plus penalties for unreported income. The elder abuse investigation was closed after they determined I was no longer in a vulnerable situation, but it's on record now if anyone else in the family ever needs it. Barbara had to pay a fine to her insurance company for ethical violations. Turns out using manipulation tactics learned in claims denial training on your own family members violates their code of conduct. The best part? I still see Leonard and Dorothy twice a week. I pick up Leonard on Wednesdays and we stop for ice cream, just like before. Dorothy tells me everything she's learning about marine biology while Leonard explains why the Reds need better pitching. Howard and I text most days now. We've had some honest conversations since I moved out. He's admitted that things went in a direction he should have stopped sooner. I believe him. Barbara and I are polite when we see each other. We'll probably never be close, and I've made peace with that. I'm 57 years old. I live 15 minutes from my grandchildren in a condo I own outright. I have my own space, my own money, and my own schedule. I drink coffee on my patio every morning and I don't check my phone until I'm ready. Most importantly, I learned something valuable. Being generous doesn't mean being stupid. Family can exploit you just as easily as strangers can. Sometimes more easily because you trust them, but you don't have to take it lying down. Carol would have figured this out faster than I did. She would have had Barbara's number from day one. But I got there eventually, and that's what matters. If you're in a similar situation, document everything. Know your rights. And remember, you can love your family and still protect yourself from them. Sometimes the people who know you best are the ones who know exactly which buttons to push, but that same knowledge can work both ways when you decide to push back. The difference between being a good man and being a pushover isn't about how much you're willing to give. It's about knowing when to stop giving and start protecting what's yours.